This is the one scenario where I actually enjoy talking about math. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be checking in on my book stats for the mid-year. Before we get into anything bookish, however, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what is your best reading month so far this year. Okay, first disclaimer, I have hiccups right now, and might be kind of hard to edit around those, so just fair warning, I might have a hiccup or two in here. And I absolutely love doing these videos. I love watching these videos, looking at everybody's graphs and charts. Like I said, the one situation where I actually enjoy talking about math, and it's mostly because all the pretty graphs and charts to talk about books. Honestly, if my stat professor had taught me in terms of books, I think my class would have gone a lot better. So we are sat at my desk today, and I will apologize now. And unfortunately, I probably won't have the best eye contact with the camera since I am going to have to be looking down here at my laptop, but I will have photos of my charts and graphs right here for you guys as well. So starting at the top with the easy numbers, for my totals, I have read 51 books so far. Of those, I have read 8,393 pages using my eyeballs, and then I have listened to roughly 206 hours of audiobooks. I also feel like I should probably state that the numbers I put down for my stats in terms of audiobooks is the full listen time at 1x speed. Honestly, majority of my books I listen from 1.5 to even 3x speed, so this number is honestly a little misleading. In terms of a monthly breakdown so far, I have read 10 books in January, 9 books in February, 11 books in March, 12 in April, which was my best month so far, 9 books in May, and then because I'm pre-filming this, I haven't read any books in June yet. In terms of a format breakdown, I have read 18 books in purely audio format, 8 ebooks, 16 books physically, and then 9 books in some sort of a mix that usually means I either had the audiobook and an ebook or the audiobook and a physical book. All in all, I'm really happy with this because I have such a high number of physical books. I used to be really bad about reading books physically. I definitely would lean more towards audiobooks or ebooks. However, lately, I've actually had a really hard time picking up ebooks. I just never prioritize them. I think I have once again fallen in love with actually having a physical book in my hands, and I'm so glad about that. Next up is my rating breakdown, and I am so happy when I look at this. Obviously, I have rated a majority of the books I've read in the 4-star category, and that is fantastic. I am so glad that the majority of books I'm reading are rating that high. That means I'm not wasting my time with ones I'm not enjoying. However, at the bottom, I have unfortunately DNF'd 5 books so far. My streak has continued. I have DNF'd about 1 book a month. Not happy with that necessarily, but I'm glad I'm not wasting too much time on finishing those books if I wasn't going to enjoy them. Thankfully, I have not had a single 1.5 or 2-star read. I have, however, unfortunately had 3 2.5 stars, 8 3 stars, 8 3.5 stars. Like I said, I'm very happy that I've had 17 4 stars, 4 4.5 stars, and finally 9 5 stars. That is awesome. I'm so glad that showcases I really know my reading taste, and 9 times out of 10 when I pick up a book, I'm probably going to enjoy it. As for genres, this is one I really enjoy looking at because in the past I used to always label myself as a mystery thriller reader, and then my stats continuously proved me wrong by showing that I read majority fantasy. Thankfully, so far this year, I've actually lowered that fantasy count a little and upped many different other genres. Going alphabetically, I have read 4 contemporary books so far, which honestly is pretty surprising because I don't really reach for contemporary very often. Following that, I've read 16 fantasy books, 1 book that goes under other, and if I'm being honest, I don't know what book that was, and I'm very curious real quick. Oh, okay, the 1 book labeled as other was a short story collection. I've read 5 graphic novels, which is fantastic since that is one of my little goals I set for myself, to try and read at least 1 comic or graphic novel a month. Clearly, I'm doing pretty well. I have read 1 historical fiction book, 3 mysteries, 6 nonfiction, which is awesome since I try and read 1 nonfiction book a month, and I've already topped that. 12 romances, making romance my second most read genre, and I'm very pleased with this development. And then finally 2 sci-fi books, which is pretty surprising because sci-fi is not usually a genre I gravitate towards. And then finally 1 thriller. All in all, I'm so happy with how diverse this wheel looks. I am reading a broad variety of genres, and I want to keep that going. Next up, let's hop into statistics about the authors I'm reading from. Starting out with author identity, I have read from 49 authors who identify as cisgender, 1 author who is genderqueer, and then 1 author who is transgender. My numbers for this one in particular were a lot better last year, so I do want to try and work on this one a bit, but that's because I read a good few series in which the author fell under the transgender umbrella or was genderqueer, so I think that definitely leaned into it. As for author gender, I have read from 42 authors who identify as female, 8 authors who identify as male, and 1 non-binary author. This breakdown is pretty on par with my previous statistics, so not really mad about it. Next up is the author's race. I definitely do not like where this statistic is currently laying at, so I definitely want to try and improve these numbers as the year continues. First up, I have read from 5 authors who are Black, 5 authors who are Asian, 2 authors who are Latinx, 1 author who is of mixed race, and then 38 authors who are white. As for reads I've had that fall into the own voices category, however, I love where this is at. I really want to try and get this to about a 50-50 breakdown. That would be fantastic. Usually I will label a book as own voices when it comes to a author's race, their gender, their sexuality, their culture, maybe their disability or neurodiversity, anything like that. This does require a little bit of research from me, but I really want to try and focus on reading from people whose experiences are different from my own. That's something I've always talked about in my stats videos in the past, and I want to continue doing that moving forward. Of the 51 books I've read so far this year, 20 of them fall into the own voices category, which is fantastic. Like I said, I want to try and work this out to about a 50-50 breakdown, but right now I'm at about a 60-40, and that's great. Next is a stat that I am really paying attention to this year because I am definitely trying to work down my own TBR, and that is where I got the book from. Of the 51 books I've read this year, I have borrowed 1. I've read 2 that I got from Book of the Month. Definitely not as many as I've bought. I've specifically bought 3 books to then turn around and read. I was gifted 2 of them. 17 books were picked up from the library. 21 of them were on my own TBR, and that is the most out of this entire graph, and I am so happy for it. I want it to stay that way as the year continues. I have received 4 books from the publisher, and then 1 also listed as other, and I don't remember what that was either. Why do I have 1 listed as other? Oh, because it is one of the Charlie Davidson novellas that you can find on Dorinda Jones's website, so that's the other. Next is a relatively new stat I started looking at, honestly, probably just in the last few months, and that is the library books I check out. I wanted to see how many of the books I check out I actually read, and then how much money have I saved by utilizing my library rather than buying them. Wait a second, that's not right. Well, I have some kind of a discrepancy because according to this list, I have checked out 19 books from my library. However, the other one said I had only read 17, and there's only 1 book which I returned without reading, so those numbers do not add up. Anyway, basically I have read 95% of the books I check out from my library. That's because if I take it out of the library, I'm very on top of myself to actually get it read. I don't like returning it without reading it. That's like a very dumb personal preference, but if I'm gonna check a book out, I want to actually read the book. However, the most important number on this sheet to me is the amount of money I have saved, and that is $324. That's fantastic. I am so glad. I love my library. I highly recommend you use yours. I am very happy that I have saved so much money, particularly because there's a few of these books that I read, and yes, I enjoyed them, but I don't really think I would keep them on my shelves after the fact. So God bless my library for giving it to me. And then finally, the last little chart I have for you guys is a Gantt chart. I actually got the idea for this from Adriana at Carbon Bonded Books. I recently talked about it in my Finish the Book tag video, which I'll link over there. I'm just gonna let that whole thing take over the entire screen for you. Basically, this chart showcases to me how long it takes for me to read a book. I'm so glad that for the most part, a lot of these books I knock out really quickly. There are a few here or there which definitely are longer. For example, Our Violent Ends is a 600-page book, so of course it took me a lot longer in comparison to, say, Satisfaction Guaranteed, which was a romance, and I finished it in probably 2 days. Down here, A Brush with Love was one I received as a e-arc, and that goes with what I was saying earlier about how I don't really prioritize my ebooks nearly as much as my physical books anymore. Same with 10 Steps to Nanette. There's also the occasional one where there's absolutely no blue, and that means I read the entirety of that book in a day. Most of those are either novellas or graphic novels, so it's not really surprising that I read them so quickly, but looking at this is just so satisfying. Okay guys, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials linked in the description if you're interested in keeping up with what I am reading. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!